Hey class. So this week's discussion post prompts us to discuss important things that social workers should know to effectively work with people in the Black population. So what I wanted to start out with this discussion post is um, due to several unethical experiments that were given in the past, the Black population doesn't necessarily have the most trusting relationship with anybody in the medical field or therapy field or any person from that is offering services whatsoever. And the first thing that I want to talk about that Joel Howe speaks about is um, J. Marion Sims. So he was a physician that moved to South Carolina and Alabama in 1835. So after he arrived, he started carrying out these experiments on enslaved women, and he was looking for a cure for vesico-vaginal fistula, which is a condition resulting from complications of childbirth and causes women to leak urine and stool uncontrollably. So he obtained a couple of enslaved women, and after obtaining them, and of course there was nothing that they could do because they were enslaved women, so they had no control over the situation at all. Once he um, got them, he kept them in a hospital that he had built behind his home. And of course, he had no consent, and he would operate on them oftentimes with no anesthesia. And it was excruciatingly painful for these women, an unbearable pain. Um, and actually, he operated on one of the girls. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, and her name was Anarka, and he operated on her 30 times between 1846 and 1849 before he was actually successful. And this man is actually known as the father of American gynecology, which I think as women, that's a little scary for us, especially knowing some of the things that women have to go through. Um, the next experiment happened almost a century later to African American men who were had syphilis. So in the 1920s, in Tuskegee, Alabama, which is known as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, um, 400, well, almost 600 men died from this experiment as they were led to believe that they were going to be receiving treatment for their syphilis. And they were often poor black men, and they did not actually receive treatment for their syphilis. They were just being part of a study so they could study the effects of syphilis. And even though that penicillin was available, these people um, just wanted to study the effects of untreated syphilis. So I understand where the medical mistrust comes from. More recently, the NAACP talks about how a black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without a just cause than a white person. A black man is twice as likely to be stopped without just cause than a black woman. 65% of black adults have felt targeted because of their race, and also police brutality. So, 1,025 people have been shot and killed by police in the past year. There are somewhere between 900 and 1,100 people who are shot and killed by police in the United States each year. And since 2005, 98 non federal law enforcement officers have been arrested in connection with fatal on duty shootings. To date, only 35 of these officers have been convicted of a crime, and oftentimes the crime is lesser offense such as manslaughter or negligent homicide rather than murder. Only 3 officers have been convicted of murder during this period and seen their conviction stand. Another 22 officers were acquitted in a jury trial, and 9 were acquitted during a bench trial decided by a judge. 10 other cases were dismissed by a judge or a prosecutor, and in one instance, no true bill was returned from a grand jury. Currently, there are 21 non federal law enforcement officers with pending criminal cases for fatal shootings. So I could only imagine the fear that people must feel to only just walk out their door or drive to work and have to deal with these things. And these are things that, as a social worker, that we need to keep in mind, because um, I feel thankful that and grateful that I do not have to worry about my son as my sons as they get older, that I don't have to worry about things like this for them. And I can the field that I want to go into is definitely mental health and substance use, and I can see why that this would have an effect on someone mentally, to see this happen and to the people that you love and you care about. So those are the things that I came up with that we need to keep in mind as social workers, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks.